Good.
Right, hi Andy. Welcome to Let's Thrive and Shine Beyond Belief. And for anybody that's out there, obviously this is a very new podcast, so we're only a few interviews in, should I say? And this whole podcast is really targeting whether it's your leaders, entrepreneurs, or business owners. And it's been able to help you to navigate life in a much better way, because quite often we're so focused on the end journey that we're not actually enjoying the journey along the way. And this is where it ends up leading us into things like burnout or anxiety or stress, or we're not sleeping properly. Or indeed, it might be a case of we've got those limiting beliefs that are holding us back and stopping us from thriving to a level that we could be. And this podcast aims to help people to be able to think of things in a different way, be able to give them hope that there is opportunities that you can achieve. And do you know what? It doesn't matter what life you're in. Anyone can achieve anything they want. They've just got to ask themselves the right questions and be able to focus things on a much different way. So we've got the lovely Andy, or do you prefer to be Andy or Andrew?
I'll be honest, when it's written, I prefer Andrew, but when I'm speaking, it's so much easier to say Andy. So we'll go with Andy.
Right, okay then. We go with Andy for this. Now, Andy's going to tell you more about his journey, but Andy is a sleep specialist for the most part. And many of you might be asking, well, what do you mean by that? We all sleep, but it's about how we're sleeping and how we're sleeping in the best possible way to give you the highest performance that you've got, so you can elevate your performance, that you have got the energy to function and you've got the ability to be able to think in a much better way. Because if you don't sleep, sleep impacts everything that you do. If you don't sleep properly, it impacts everything you do. And this is where Andy's going to give us a little bit more background to that and why he's actually on this journey in the first place. So thank you again, Andy. And tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me, why are you a sleep specialist?
So I'll start with that last question there. So the reason that I've specialised in sleep is because I had it as probably my lowest priority for close to 20 years. So I got to a point where I was an absolute walking zombie, to the point where I wasn't a good dad. I was struggling with my career, struggling with business, just struggling to function day to day. That's how bad it got. But to give a little bit of an insight into sort of how I got to that point. So by the time I'd finished full-time education, went into the working world, ended up in an industry that found that I had a real good ability to thrive in and do really well, and started building a really young career, a really young age, a really strong career and good foundations of that. And over across sort of 15, 20 years, got to a level that certainly by that point in time was way ahead of where I thought I could get to, and had a real simple blueprint of where my career would go, where it could get to. And, that was, say, far surpassed where I probably thought it ever could at the beginning. But it was around 4 or 5 years ago that I suddenly realised that what I was doing was sacrificing so much of myself and my time with my family. And there was a few things along the way that made that really stick out to me. I hit burnout a couple of occasions, as well as losing my dad and father-in-law at a fairly young age, in all things considered. And they'd done a similar thing if they just devoted themselves to career ahead of everything else, and often neglected aspects of family life and their own personal well-being. And I think real ambitions to just subscribe to this old-fashioned mentality of must provide for the family, must just earn money, and that is my sole purpose. And I certainly realised that wasn't where I wanted to go with my life. And like I say, that sort of led me into this path of needing to find some help. So to go back for context, around about the time of COVID lockdown, I had a really good career, but also ran a business alongside my wife on the side, which over the course of lockdown and that period when everyone was online shopping because they generally had nothing better to do with their time, it absolutely took off the business, and it doubled in terms of turnover and order volume about 4 times just across that first lockdown period. So we went from processing a handful of orders each day to having 6 or 7 pallets delivered to our driveway 2 or 3 times a week. And it was this huge amount of time that was required to keep on top of that. And so At the time, we also had a 2-year-old who was going through a bit of a difficult phase, not sleeping very well. So we were not sleeping at all. We were literally getting up at 5, 6 in the morning and going to bed at 2, 3 o'clock at night the following morning, and surviving on 2 or 3 hours sleep. And I stress the word surviving because we definitely weren't living at that point. And that's when we realised that we've got to get a grip of this. We've got to find a way of finding more time in the day, but also to get control of our sleep and our energy, because we were both at the point of tapping out and giving up because we were just struggling so much. And so we connected with someone who was a sleep coach, sleep expert, and my wife sort of went first, had the first session with them, and she raved about how brilliant this could be. And I was quite skeptical. I was quite of the mindset of, well, I've been sleeping for 30 odd years. What on earth are you going to tell me? And that's something that to this day, I still come up against that quite regularly. And I enjoy speaking to the person that thinks that way. But I embarked on it as well. And it's such a cliche phrase to say it was life-changing. But it absolutely was for us. And this is what I do now, is the stress to people that it's not just going to bed, closing your eyes and getting up in the morning. There's a lot of preparation to it. There's a lot of stuff you do during the night, and the way that you prepare everything around your sleep aspect really has this massive impact on the quality of it. And an analogy I often use is a car. If you get a car, not an electric car now, but obviously a traditional petrol car, you've got to look after it. You've got to service it. You've got to put the right level of care into it if you want it to be running in 20, 30 years' time. If you want it to thrash it for 6 months and not really take care of it, you're going to probably affect the length of time that car is going to be useful to you. And it's exactly the same with your body. And sleep is effectively the oil that goes into the car, because if you're not servicing your body in the right way, it is not going to last as long. When you get to a certain age in life, you start to become more acutely aware of the fact that there is a finite timeline on your body and your health and your life. And so for me, that was a big thing to realize that. And having gone through burnout twice, the second occasion of which was quite scary because I had kids at that point in time, it made me realize that there was a real importance here, that I needed to do something now to think about my longevity. And so working with the sleep coach that we did, it was absolutely transformational. Lost loads of weight, which was just a happy byproduct of that. Had energy that I thought I'd left behind in my early 20s, and felt great. And what we found is that I've talked about how busy we were with work and our business at the same time, is we were getting so much more done in so much less time because we were able to think clearer, think more creatively, be more effective in the moment, and have much less procrastination and that sort of stuff. And so that gives me a great interest in sort of the journey I've been through. And I realized that, I was on a path with my career to, like I say, from a materialistic view of things, I was going to surpass where I ever thought I could get to in that. But at a huge personal cost, and not just cost to me, but cost to my family and that, because I probably was on a path to having really serious health issues within the next 5 to 10 years at a very young age, because it was just a constant life of stress, pressure, no sleep, poor eating habits, not enough exercise, not enough time to stop and unwind. That it was a very difficult and dangerous cocktail, really.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the most interesting things that all of it's a great journey, and thank you for sharing that. But one of the things that cropped up a few times there that you was talking about is the fact that the weight, the benefit from learning to sleep better was the weight loss that goes with it. And what people fail to understand is that one of the things about, if you're not sleeping properly, it has an impact on how your brain actually tells your stomach whether you're actually full or not. So even if you've had a good meal in the evening, your brain is telling you that your stomach is actually empty. and it needs topping up, which is why you then get the food cravings at night. And then, of course, you then crave food that's easy and accessible, which tends to be the high carb, processed foods, chocolate, sugar, junk food that's easy accessible. And unless you're really rigid, one of these ones that's got stuff that's in the fridge that's at hand that you can snack on, yeah, or maybe like nuts and that, but by and large, that doesn't happen. And that's where you start eating more than you should do. The knock-on effect of that is that you feel even more sluggish when your gut's not healthy, your brain's not healthy, your gut's not healthy. So it has an effect. And this is where, people do end up in hospital. As you turn around and said, is that your family is slowly watching you die inside, because effectively you're not consuming healthily from the inside and out. So, sleep is so fundamental and the least spoken about topic that there is, and yet it's one of the most important things that we do every single day of our lives.
Definitely, and you're absolutely right, because it's a cycle. So you're tired, you're not getting enough energy, you're going to make poor decisions because your brain isn't wired up to operate well. So you make poor decisions, and food is one of those decision makers that's probably going to take a hit. And by doing that, you end up feeling more sluggish, and then you feel more miserable, and then you can't think clearly, so then you're not operating as well as you'd like. Then that starts to affect your sleep, because you're creating stress in your life and worry and concern. Your sleep gets worse, and then your decision making continues to get worse. And it's a cycle that people get into so easily, but don't address all of the key issues. And I think people, if they started with sleep isn't the answer to everything, it's not. But it's often the first thing you need to sort out. And that's the one thing that people so often bypass, because I've got loads of work to do. I'll just work later. I'll just get up earlier. I'll be honest, I hate the 5 a.m. club and the concept of that, because that might be fine if your chronotype is such that you are an early riser and you're going to operate better in the morning. That's brilliant. But if you're not, if you're genetically wired that you are going to be more focused by working later in the day rather than first thing in the morning, you're just trying to force your body to work in a way that it's not.
And it's creating a guilt as well that, I'm not one of these 5 a.m. starters. And as you turn around and say, everybody's circadian rhythm is different. And the important thing is that you maintain your circadian rhythm. So if you have got, say, for instance, you are one that performs better in the afternoon or late at night, and it means that you're one of these ones that prefer getting up later in the morning, that's okay. But it's being consistent about that. And if you go to bed at a certain time, then be consistent about the time that you go to bed. There are going to be one-off occasions where, you're going out somewhere special or something like that, where that would be different. But don't feel compelled that you've got to be this 5 a.m. person, get up, go and do some meditation, go and do some yoga, go and do an ice cold bath, go and do this, go and do that. Must, because you're still actually creating that mindset that I've got to be in that do situation, and I've got to be like everybody else.
I think it's about you. People now try so hard to be something that they're not. No. And it's really important to have goals. It's really important to aspire to do new things or to reach new heights and to level up. That's really important, because you've still got ambition at that point. You still want to improve. But if you're doing that at absolute cost and at the absolute opposite of maybe what your body is wired to do. One of the first things I did on my journey was to have a DNA test, and you get so much information from that, more information than I ever thought possible. And you can learn so much from that affects your energy and your sleep. And one of the things is around caffeine. Caffeine is one of the biggest problems with sleep that people have, because they're consuming it in too high a quantity and too late in the day usually. But everyone's got different caffeine sensitivity. So person A would drink 2 cups of coffee and be absolutely bouncing off the ceiling. Person B would have the same amount and they're barely getting any impact at all. But then what you do, think of the workplace, you get into a cycle. I certainly have been guilty of this in the past. You get in a cycle of persons that opposite you. So I'm going to get a coffee. Oh yeah, make me one while you're there. So then, but the caffeine sensitivity could be totally different. And so the two of you are going to have very different experiences. And one of you is almost certainly going to have a negative impact later that night. Because you're going to be hardwired still, and you're going to be buzzing off this caffeine that is actually doing you a disservice. So one of the things I drill into people straight away is that you need to have a really strict caffeine window. And you used the word consistency a minute ago there, and it's the word I probably say the most regularly in my professional life because it's absolutely crucial. But if you're consistent with your caffeine window and only drink between time A and B, which is going to be the optimal time, you're not going to impact your sleep that night. You're going to have better sleep as a result of it. You're going to feel better in the morning. You're not going to feel that reliance to have a coffee first thing when you don't need it, because your body's generating enough in itself to give you that burst of energy first thing in the morning. You don't need a big dose of caffeine first thing. And you're just putting yourself absolutely out of kilter. And it's the same with food as well. Nutrition has such a massive impact on sleep, because if you're eating too late at night, you've talked about a number of things where it has huge impact on weight gain and your mood. But also your body, when it goes to sleep at night, you effectively shut down. That's when your body repairs, and it fixes all of the harm or the stress you've imposed on it, good and bad, throughout the day. If you've consumed the food any more than or any less than 2 or 3 hours before bed, your body's still got to process that. And so at the point when your digestive system needs to shut down and repair as part of this overall regeneration, it's not, because it's still processing that food. And that was something I saw a massive difference with when I first started doing this myself. Was quite often we'd eat dinner at 10 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock at night, grab something to eat while working, and then go to bed. And then wondered why we were not having good sleep. We weren't feeling rested in the morning and all that, because our bodies are still trying to process that food and deal with it, point when it should be shutting down.
Yeah, most definitely. So, thank you for sharing that. So, on that basis, then, obviously, you've already given a few tips that are there. What tips would you give to listeners to help them, to prevent them from feeling burnt out, or whether it is about limiting beliefs or things that are holding back, or just, tips about sleep? What would you recommend?
Well, a few things that I talk about often, which are not necessarily sleep specific, but for me have been huge in terms of personal growth, change, and working with clients and helping them, is you've got to always consider your balance. Because the way I always explain it is, you've got your work persona, your business persona, you've got your family persona, and you've also got your view of yourself as well. And you've got to have the right balance between those things, because if you're putting too much into one, you're ultimately going to be neglecting the other. So I try to think of it as ladders. You've got these 4 ladders of life, which for me, I believe, is health, wealth, productivity, and connection. Health and wealth are self-explanatory. Productivity goes into all of the others, and connection is with your loved ones, your family, your friends. If you're climbing one of those ladders and absolutely ascending it to the very top, the chances are you're lagging on one of the others somewhere else. And so balance for me is absolutely key. I think asking for help is still massively underutilized by so many people. And I think true strength comes from acknowledging your vulnerability. I think it's really important that. And there's still loads of things I need to do better in day-to-day in my life. And the more open and honest I am with that, the more chance I have of dealing with it. And another one, it's just a little thing, but it's a sentence I use so regularly, which is that no is a complete sentence. And I'm working with a high performer at the moment. And I've had to remind them of that, because they get dragged into so many aspects of their business and things sort of on the satellite issues that they don't necessarily to be involved with, and just say no. But it's so important. I'm teaching my 10-year-old daughter that as well now. It's so important to learn that as she's getting into relationships with friends and that. And you just got to say no sometimes. You don't have to judge. You don't have to justify why you're saying. But in terms of sleep, the real simple ones is consistency, which we've talked about. It's absolutely massive. One which I'm seeing more and more of at the moment is people are getting into the idea of wearing technology to monitor their sleep. So Whoop bands are really getting a lot of popularity at the moment. I wear an Aura ring, which tracks my sleep. I just tell people to be aware of it, because if I wore this and I wore a Whoop band, which I did one night, I borrowed a Whoop band and wore that to see how the data compares, it was quite different between the two devices that I'm wearing at the exact same time. And so don't compare to other people, don't compare to your partner or friends, because your data is going to be totally different to theirs, and it doesn't actually mean anything. What I would say is pick one thing if you want to monitor it and track it. Pick one piece of data point and use it as a baseline. Don't assume that what it's telling you is exactly correct, because if you wore another piece of technology, it would tell you something slightly different. So just get that, stick to one and use it as a baseline for that's how I usually am. That's how I usually feel when it gives me this arbitrary number. So I'll make sure that going forward, I'm thinking about it in terms of, yes, that's a number that the device on my wrist is telling me, but how do I feel? That's the most important thing. And the other thing that I stress to people is people think of their bedtime routine starts at maybe 9:30 at night when they go upstairs, brush their teeth, pop the phone on charge and get in bed. Think of it that your bedtime routine starts as soon as you get out of bed in the morning. Everything you do through the day, whether it's a very strict morning routine or whether it's not, every bit of stress, good and bad, that you put into your body through that day, whether that be work, whether that be exercise, is all contributing and building pressure for your bedtime at night. I often explain a bit as a sleep train. You get on the platform first thing in the morning, you're off and away on your day, and you're going through a number of different stops throughout that day. And if you think of it that way, you can create some rigidity, because you can't just, like a car, you can't drive off on a train. You are on a path to wherever that train is going, and it's going to go back to bedtime at night. And so I think it's really important just to think of everything you're doing throughout that day is preparing you for bedtime that night. And then everything that your body's doing at night when it's repairing and restoring is preparing you for the next day. And if people can get into the cycle of thinking like that way, you're going to feel the benefit tomorrow of the actions you take this morning, because your sleep tonight is going to be so much better.
And that's an absolutely amazing piece of advice. One of the things that I often talk to with my clients is, one of my routines in the morning is, one, you don't have your mobile phone in the room, and don't make that the first thing that you do, because as soon as you start engaging with your phone and reading emails or WhatsApp or whatever it is that you do, you're already putting anxiety, and you're starting off your day in a space of anxiety because you're irritated by what's being done, or someone's not responding enough, or whatever your response may be, it's not going to be positive. And the other thing is that, as soon as I've had a shower, and some of my friends actually laugh at me about this, the first thing I do is I'll have a shower, I'll go straight downstairs, obviously I'll let my dogs out, but just going outside and having at least 20 seconds of being outside in the fresh air, and even if the sun is not out, you're helping with yourself, which, as you say, is helping with your circadian rhythm, because it's helping you to actually have that morning start of the morning and at what time it is at night as well, that balance that comes with it. And even during the day, those moments, saying to people, if you can take at least 3 to 5 minutes stepping away from your desk each hour and just being away from technology and away from people, it's okay. I just want to step away. I just want to sit, be present, get some fresh air, have a moment of clarity. Because you turn around and say, as soon as you clear your mind, the less busy your mind is, when you go to bed at night, your brain's not going at 1,000 miles an hour, and then it slows down. Because how many people have said to you, oh, I'm most creative at night time? No, you're not. What you're doing, your brain's going at 1,000 miles an hour, so you get up to do some creativity, which is going to take you 3 times as long than you would have done if you'd done it during the day. But if you'd have actually practiced some self-care and just stop. And as you turn around and say, learning the art of using a sentence, like I said this morning on a podcast myself, was no is a full sentence. And you can finish it off with a thank you, but no is enough. So, and stop saying yes to everything.
There's so many little bits of that. You're absolutely right. Sunlight in the morning and a bit of fresh air is massive. It kickstarts your body. It kickstarts all of the functions in your body in the morning. Likewise at night, the phone before bed as well, you're just creating stress. And if you create stress, that will start peaking in your body. You're going to struggle to sleep. The best thing I do, I put my phone on, used to put it on charge next to my bed. I would put it on charge downstairs now. Then I can't be tempted by doing that. And people say, well, what about your alarm clock? Well, this is me sort of preaching a little bit. Because I'm so consistent with my bedtimes now, bar that odd social occasion that maybe keeps you up later. Because I'm so consistent with it, I wake up within the same 10 to 15 minute window every morning without an alarm clock, without my kids bursting in and jumping on top of me. It is literally that same 10 to 15 minute window. I will wake up in 99% of the time now, every morning. So I don't need that alarm clock, because your body's got its own built-in alarm clock. It's circadian rhythm.
And do you know what? There is such a thing as a clock. So if you don't want your mobile phone, that's fine. You know, and what I'd also recommend is don't have it so you can see what the time is. So you can have a clock in a room, but face it away from you, because by virtue of the fact that you can see the actual clock, and if you wake up and you're like, God, I've got another hour to sleep, I've only got 2 hours, or blah. So you then start stressing that you haven't had enough sleep and going into that panic mode. As much as possible, no tech. And even if you do have the phone in a room, stick it on the other side of the room, as you turn and say, turn off all the notifications and just have it in sleep mode, do not disturb mode, and just have the alarm. And most phones now, you can turn around and say, stop. So it turns the alarm off. So you don't need it next to you. So you don't even need to touch it. So yeah, perfect. So just going slightly off, what would be the one tip you'd give your 20-year-old self if you was to go back, and why would you say it?
So with the context of knowing who I was at 20, I would say to that person, start aspiring for more, because I was very limiting in what I thought someone with my background that had grown up in the town that I did could achieve. I'm very big talking about the way that we live in boxes and the way that society and history dictates of the boxes that we should tick off as we go through life. And I subscribe to that at a very young age. And I would say to myself, aspire for more now, and start surrounding yourself with people that will support that, because the people you surround yourself with will influence the people you become. And that doesn't mean cutting off your friends, because the friends I've got when I was 16, 17 are the same friends that I've got now, a lot of them. But I've made a lot more friends in the meantime that helped me push on and do more. So I would definitely say that.
And on that basis as well, if you was going to have a list of songs that you would play to lift your mood, if you've got maybe a burnout list and to avoid it, what would those songs be and why?
There's a couple of things for that. So my daughter, like I say, she's 10 at the moment, and she's getting really into music, and it's delightful to me that so much of the music she's listening to certainly predates her being born. Some of it predates me even being born. So she's got really eclectic music. But she's created a playlist called Coconut Girl, and it's so uplifting and innocent and lovely music. But there's a couple of songs for me. One is it's a song called Shambhala by Three Dog Night. I think it was made in the 70s, but it's such a happy song. It really is. And there's another one, the song Blue Moon. It's quite an old song, but there was a version recorded by the Martells, which I loved. And it's just loads of happy memories associated to that as well. So they're the two songs in particular that really lift my mood. But just listening to the playlist that my daughter's made is brilliant. I love it. It's really happy.
So is that a Spotify playlist?
It's one that she's made, yeah. I don't know whether it's accessible to others or not, but it's just great.
Because sometimes you can share those, can't you? So you've got these playlists that you can share, and it's quite nice if it's going to listen.
Put it out there, because it's so innocent and nice.
Yeah. I love the fact that she's got such an eclectic taste, and it's one of the things that I love. I was very fortunate that my mum and dad had very eclectic taste in music that opened up my mind to so much that was out there. I mean, I did actually say at one time I was born in the wrong era, because I love like 1940s hot club, swing and jazz, and all those, not sort of modern jazz, but the hot uplifting sort of jazz, and people like Ella Fitzgerald and all those. And I feel really privileged that I've been exposed to that, because the words have so much definition and importance and passion, and some of it's actually really, really naughty as well. When you actually really read what's going on in there, between the lines, there's a lot more going on. But also the fact that live music, because I don't think that we have enough live music now. There's too much synthesized, or where it's all using computers and everything like that, and nothing. And I don't care whether it's a punk band a jazz band, a rock band, whatever. But when you see a band that's live and the atmosphere that actually triggers, it is so much uplifting. You get the vibe off of the audience, don't you? Not just them playing it. So
I'd really strongly recommend to anyone, but especially what you just said there. There's a group called Postmodern Jukebox. They're from America, but they tour a lot in the UK, and they do a lot of contemporary songs into the 50s swing style, jazz style. And we went and watched them last year, and they're absolutely fantastic.
yeah, I know exactly who you are talking about, and one of my favourite songs they do, and it's absolutely brilliant. And Creep,
yeah,
and it's brilliant. And I'm often singing that out loud in the car, but in the style of Postmodern Jukebox is brilliant. So we need to talk some more.
Yeah, the energy when they did that, the energy in the room was unreal. I'm getting goosebumps now, genuinely.
Yeah, so it's good. And so the other one is a book. If you was going to recommend a book to anybody, what would that be and why?
So don't think bad of me. The title of the book is a bit of a swear word in it, but I'll censor myself. But it's a book that came along at just the right time. It's called How to Be Effing Awesome by a guy called Dan Meredith. Very simple in some of the messages it has, and it's quite simple in the way it's written, but it's really impactful. And it came at just the right time for me. Just a friend recommended it, and I ended up going on to work with Dan and getting help from him. Real good in terms of, it's a business focused book, but it talks about so much more than that, and it makes you think about how you dealing with your life as well. A book that I've read recently, which in many ways it doesn't tie in at all to my beliefs or what I do now, is called Shoe Dog. It's memoirs of a guy called Phil Knight who founded Nike. So there's a lot in there about the corporate world and corporate business at the very highest level, but it's such a real interesting story, his story of how he founded Nike and the struggles that he had getting it established. In terms of the mentality of not giving up and pushing on, it is absolutely brilliant book. But I'm reading something called Psycho-Cybernetics at the minute. It's quite an old book, but it's been recommended to me. I'm just getting into that at the moment. It's all about your vision of yourself and how you see yourself and how that affects your interactions with the world. So really looks really good at the moment. Enjoying it.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, thank you for those books. They're actually titles that I'm not familiar with, but quite interesting when you're talking about the, quite often the CEOs and people that have created businesses. People think that they've had it easy, high performance sportsmen and all those kind of things. I don't know if you listen to the high performing podcasts, and it's such a good thing because people think it's about, oh, you're really successful and they're rich and all that, and it's not about that at all. It's actually about the journey that they've had to get to where they've got to, and it's not been easy, and they have had to bounce back, and push hard to actually achieve it, but not necessarily hard, but be smart with it as well, because often the people that are racing think that they've got to be hard push, which if you can flip the technique, then you can actually enjoy the journey whilst you're actually doing it. So anybody that hasn't listened to it, then I definitely would recommend it. So it's a great thing.
I think the setbacks in life is what shapes you, and I think the way that you deal with those can be really a real profound strength. We went through, sorry to digest it, but we went through in this very short period of time. We lost my dad, my father-in-law, and a baby in a really short space of time. And very easily, I think, as a relationship and as just two individuals, I think me and my wife could have quite easily thrown in the towel at that point and not progressed anymore in life, or certainly not for a long time. But we somehow managed to use that and to galvanise us and think now's the time to really press on and do something with our lives more so than we maybe are at the moment. And that was a big catalyst, I say, in that period of change that I went through. Yeah,
and it does. And I mean, thank you for sharing that, and that must have been truly tough to experience. Especially when you're losing a child is just devastating. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've experienced, I mean, unfortunately I lost my brother a couple of years ago. I know you and I was talking about that earlier, and I do believe that my burnout that I had in 2020, because I went through this whole journey of learning about myself and connecting with myself, and things like, gratitude, meditation, sleeping better, and, just learning about myself. I think it actually helped prepare me for when my brother passed away, because it's helped me to think of him in a much better way, in terms of he's with me all the time. After all, we're all energy and matter. And I look up and smile at him every day because he's here as my motivation. But I do believe if things had been different, I would have managed that in a different way. But it's gifted me the ability to say, what am I learning from this experience? How can I change the way in which I perceive it, and how can I help someone else through that journey? And I wish that there was ways that I could actually help my mum and dad to see things in a slightly different way, because obviously, as you turn around and say, losing your children is the worst possible thing ever. You should never go, they should never go first. And it's trying to sort of help them on that journey and being able to say, okay, how can I take something positive from such a tragic situation, but help it not just for me but for others. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, and I really appreciate that. So before we go, Andy, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience, the listeners, your pearls of wisdom that you'd like to leave them with? And also, how can people reach you?
So you've obviously got my details for my social links and my website, which I'm sure you'll share. Best place to contact me is probably through Instagram, on the messaging there. I'm always keeping an eye on that, or just through the website. There's a simple link to click on there, and there's loads of information on there as to what I do, because I work with people individually, but I also do a lot of work in businesses as well. So supporting them with some sleep stuff as part of well-being, as well as sort of some specific things like working with night shifts and going in, speaking to them, and doing some sort of one-to-one work and group work with night shifts, which is the absolute most difficult thing you can do in terms of your energy. It's absolutely awful that we put ourselves through that, but society dictates that we need that at the moment. I'm just at the minute, I'm just getting it all finalised now, ready to put live in the next couple of days as well. Some free resources that are going onto the website. One is around mindset. One is also about sleep specifically. I think the thing with sleep is there's so much information out there now on TikTok and social media in general around sleep and sleep habits and things you can do, but sometimes they're a little bit too generic and they don't work for everyone. And so what I've done, I've just pulled in a lot of the knowledge I've got, a lot of the tips and experience into sort of one place, that you can think about it from your personal point of view of, how does that actually work for me, and will it work for me, or should I be focusing on something else? So yeah, those they're going live in the next day or two. So certainly by the time this goes out, they should be available as well.
Yeah.
As a
No, that's fantastic, Andy. And yeah, thank you for coming on here. And I know that there's going to be lots of things that you shared that benefit others. And I think that one of the important things that you've actually mentioned here is about being able to express vulnerability. And, sometimes you need to have the courage to be able to ask for help. And also for you women out there, what I am going to say is that if you're going to ask men to be able to be vulnerable, actually give them permission to do that as well, because one of the biggest things that I've learned is that quite often we want men to be vulnerable, but when they are, they also then get shot down for it. So give them permission and actually accept it and say, how can I help you back? So I'm going to leave that one with you. So, which is another topic in its own right. So, but there you go. So anyway, thank you everybody once again. Thank you for joining us on Let's Thrive and Shine Beyond Belief. And if there is any leaders, entrepreneurs or business owners out there that you think could benefit from this and actually get the opportunity to find ways that they can thrive and shine, then please share or subscribe with them, and that'd be fantastic. Anyway, thank you, Andy. Thank you for joining me, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to seeing your free resources. Right, just stop there.